Welcome, moviegoers. How are we doing? Good, good. Do you have your ticket? All right, what do we have here? Real Swell. Good choice. You're going to be in Auditorium 54. It's straight ahead and to the left. Enjoy. Daredevil Born Again premiered 2 episodes tonight, and I considered 2 episodes of Real Swell to go along with each of them, but episode 5 of Daredevil didn't really have much to it. It was essentially Matt going into a bank to apply for a loan for the law firm, and he isn't able to obtain the loan because the clients he take on, they are already behind on paying him. So how is he expected to repay a loan? But the point of this episode was, what I feel anyway, just to remind us that Ms. Marvel is in the MCU. The assistant manager of the bank who Matt meets with is Yusuf Khan, Kamala Khan's father. And he's, in the entire episode, is integral to the plot. But as far as the rest of what the episode is about, it's just a bank robbery. The assailants, they go into the bank needing something from a safety deposit box. It turns out to be a diamond. And at the end of the episode, Matt stalls long enough for the police to storm the bank, take out the robbers, and he chases one of them out of the bank because he changes into an officer's uniform and just strolls out as if he's a part of the task force that stormed the bank previously. He finds that particular assailant walking down an alley. He puts on one of the masks that the robbers had on, and he beats this guy up, breaks his leg, and we don't hear from him at all. There's a woman who was in the bank, one of the quote unquote hostages, who was in on it. The diamond that they believe they've successfully retrieved, she's given that diamond and is told, hey, give this to Luca. Now, Luca is one of the thugs who Vanessa tells, well, through a proxy, Buck, to pay one of the other mobs restitution for having killed some of their men in that truck heist that went awry in the previous episodes. So Luca owes, Victor is his name, $1.8 million because of that botched heist and those men that were killed. So Luca devised this plan to rob this bank, to get this diamond and pay off Victor. It turns out that the diamond that this female associate is given is just a butterscotch candy, because this is a yellow diamond. So it's in this pouch. So she doesn't look in the pouch to make sure that the diamond is in there, but she takes the pouch, walks outside, and then, because she's curious, opens it up, checks to see what the diamond looks like. It's a butterscotch candy. And this ties into Matt giving the diamond back to the bank. He puts it in a candy dish that Yusuf has on his desk, and they happen to be butterscotches. So he throws it in the candy dish and he leaves. And then Yusuf, of course, finds that diamond and goes, oh, that's weird. But that's the end of the episode. That it was a 30-minute long episode, and it just felt like it was them reminding us that Ms. Marvel is a part of the MCU. Cool. So we may or may not see her in future episodes Or when Ms. Marvel comes back, maybe Daredevil makes an appearance there. Episode 6, however, we get a lot more. The first 10 minutes of episode 6 is actually the conclusion of episode 5. They could have just put those two together. Not really like this. Both of these episodes could have actually just been one 50-minute episode instead of one 30-minute episode and another 40-minute episode. I know that math doesn't equate to 50 minutes, but they could have shaved some of each of these episodes out to give us a clean 50-minute episode with both of these storylines in it. So the beginning of episode 6 is Luca visiting Kingpin, or Mayor Fisk, in his office. And he goes there to tell Fisk he's not paying this money because his attempt to get the money to repay it failed. So now he's just being petulant, not knowing, of course, or not letting on that he tried to rob this bank to get some money, but he knows he can't pay it and he doesn't want to. So now he's just going to go straight up to Wilson and say, no, I'm not doing it. Well, Wilson says to him, I'm not sure why you showed up. You owe Victor this money and you have until the end of the week. We're not negotiating this. You need to pay him. And Luca, of course, again, says, no, I'm not doing it. Well, Wilson then says, make it 2.8 million and you still have to till the end of the week. And then the opening credits of the episode begin. So that segment could have just been the conclusion of the previous episode, but they tacked it onto this one. And it ties into episode 6, but it's all one continuous story anyway. And if you're going to premiere 2 episodes back to back, it's not like we've forgotten what happened 30 seconds ago from the ending credits of the previous episode. It's very weird how they put those two together and then chop them up. It's, again, episode 6 though, we learn more about Muse. It turns out he has been working in New York City and committing these murders for a very long time. He's racked up 60 bodies and is using their blood to paint his murals all over the city. It turns out that that is what Hector Ayala was investigating as White Tiger. He suspected that the people going missing in his part of the city wasn't just a coincidence, that there was something wrong, and he was trying to figure out what it is. His niece shows up to Matt's law office because she wants to talk to him about that very thing. Now, this scene and this conversation, while it served its purpose, it didn't necessarily make sense because she goes there to let Matt know, hey, Hector was working on something. He's trying to figure out what's happening to the people of the city, and I need for this investigation to continue. Can you help? And Matt, because he's a lawyer, says just that. There's not much I can do. You have to take this to the police. To which Hector's niece gets upset and says, because she's still under this belief, the police killed my uncle. I can't go to them. They're not going to do anything about it. They don't care. I need you to help me. And again, Matt says, I can't. I literally can't do anything. This is a law enforcement issue. And Hector's niece replies with, no, Matt says, he poses a hypothetical or a rhetorical question. What is it you want me to do? To which she replies, literally anything. She says, you're supposed to be the one out here fighting for the little guy. You're supposed to be the one who gets things done. But now that the little guy is asking you for help, you want to say no because it doesn't fit your agenda. But in the grand scheme of things, he's a lawyer. What does she want him to do? I just found it weird that that's the angle they would use to mess with Matt's psyche to get back out there to be Daredevil. That's what that scene was. I mean, it worked, but again, it was just weird that he would. No, it's weird that they would word it that way because she doesn't know he's a vigilante. The only thing that she knows is he's a blind lawyer. What resources does she think he has? I don't know. It's just weird that that's the angle they would take. But it does conjure up something within him that plays out throughout the rest of the episode. But we also have Fisk trying to raise money for this port project that he spoke about a couple of episodes ago. He wants to rebuild this port, bring commerce, bring transportation, bring housing, bring the economy to this port. Well, he hosts a gala, a fundraiser, to ask the elite of New York City, for funding for this project. And he quickly learns that the people at the top, those 1%, they don't necessarily care about the city. They care about being rich. And Vanessa actually tells him so. She says, the people that you're about to go speak with, you're essentially begging them for money, for something that they don't necessarily have to care about. What they do care about, though, is maintaining their supremacy. So if you're not offering anything more than that, or if you're offering anything less than that, they're going to shun you. They're going to ignore you, and you're not going to get any money. So he goes to this fundraiser, and he experiences exactly that. He's talking to 3 or 4 different people at this event, and they're all essentially saying either it's not worth my time, it's not worth my money, and you're Kingpin. I'm pretty sure you just want to build up this port to enrich yourself and your associates. This sounds illegal, what you're trying to do. He pushes back, or he tries to, in a very civil way. Be polite, be respectful, and say, no, you're actually not correct. I do want to better the city, and I believe that this port is one of the many things that can be a stepping stone to making New York City better. But none of them are buying it. In fact, one of them goes so far as to say, don't worry about making the city better. We don't care. The power that you once held in your other many business endeavors as Kingpin, we'll put that in parentheses because he didn't say those words, but that means nothing in this room. You can also disappear. I'll just have to make one phone call and no one will ever have heard from you again. And Wilson says, is that a threat? And the fellow says, no, it's a warning. He's basically saying, stop asking us for money. Stop being so aggressive about it. You're not giving us anything in return. So no, go sit down somewhere. And he has to take that on the chin. Wilson does. Because he can't be Kingpin in that scenario and muscle his way to getting the money that he wants and that he needs for this project. After that party, we switch over to Muse. And the Next, victims of his are displayed for everyone out in the open, and the sanitation department of New York City is trying to clean this up, clean the mural off of this building wall, and they can't. And they're trying to figure out why this paint isn't coming off of the wall. They try many different cleaning solutions, different power washers, and they just can't get this paint off of the wall. So they run a chemical analysis of the paint and notice that it's human blood. And they've noticed this around the city. There are many murals that they've not been able to get cleaned up. So they ran an analysis on all of them to discover that there are about a dozen of these murals, each having blood samples of 5 different people around the city. There are 60 or so victims of a serial killer, essentially, painting murals around New York City. The head of the sanitation department brings that to Wilson to essentially tell him, "You got a serial killer on your hands." And Wilson looks shocked and upset and annoyed. And then he calls for a meeting with all the police, detectives, and some of his other aides. And he says something very interesting. He says, when the head of the sanitation department finds out that we have a serial killer before the NYPD, there's something wrong. And he isn't wrong in that. So the police chief or the police commissioner, who he's blackmailing into staying on as police commissioner, looks kind of upset that he would say that out loud, because that's essentially what everybody's thinking, right? How is it that we've got 60 people who've gone missing, no one's noticed except for the sanitation department? It's very strange. So he's like, "What do you want us to do?" And Wilson says, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." So he puts together this task force, and it's about 15 or 20 cops around New York. And he tells the commissioner, "Hey, go find these guys, round them up, because I need them to help hunt down Muse, because whatever it is that you're doing isn't working." And the commissioner looks through the list, and he notes that these are the baddest apples in the bunch. The first face that we see is the cop from the altercation with Hector Ayala, the surviving partner. And Wilson says to the commissioner, there are a lot of superlatives that could be used to describe these men, but all of them over their careers have shown initiative. You like to call them a gang. They've gained this reputation, but these are the ones we need. These are the ones that I need. And he himself plans to oversee this task force. So he goes to meet up with them in this hangar. Looks like an airplane hangar. And he's talking to them, letting them know the truth. Listen, I know you guys have done some shady things in the past, but those kinds of shady things are exactly what we need to hunt down vigilantes and serial killers such as Muse. He calls the task force the Anti-Vigilante Task Force, although he commissioned them to hunt down Muse. So he's kind of using it to do two things. And he has given this task force special privileges, we'll say. The oversight will be done by him, so any excessive violence isn't a thing. He's also said that they don't need to wear body cameras, so he's just giving them free rein to terrorize the city to find vigilantes and or Muse. And these cops already have a tendency to go above and beyond we'll say, when getting results. Now, that task force is very excited. They're getting geared up, and they will be deployed throughout the city. All the while, Muse is still out there. He's still murdering and creating his art. Hector Ayala's niece finds her way down a subway line, one of the ones that Hector told her about that he was investigating. And then she's down there by herself. It's probably 11 o'clock at night, and she gets taken by Muse, because of course she would. And he puts her on the table and is performing the same ritual that he's done for all of his other victims. He's exsanguinating them, and then will later use that blood to paint his murals. He is in the middle of this ritual when Daredevil finds him, and they have a fight, and the fight is amazing. I didn't realize how adept at fighting Muse was going to be, but he goes toe to toe with Daredevil. And while that scene is happening, we have Wilson opening the door to his cellar where he's got Adam kept, and you see him holding an axe. And you can only think the worst for Adam. Like, he has to go now. Wilson is fed up with being nice. He's fed up with playing mayor. And Kingpin is just boiling up inside. So he's got this axe, and he is approaching Adam's cell. And he says to Adam, I can imagine that Vanessa would probably want me to let you go. And Adam thinks, oh, okay, you're about to let me go. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Not noticing the axe in his hand. So he's not as afraid as he probably should be. At any rate, Wilson unlocks the cell and opens the door. And then Adam sees the axe, and then he gets afraid. So maybe he just couldn't see it through the bars that Wilson's standing in front of. Again, anyway, he gets afraid. And Wilson begins to tell this story about how when he was younger, he was smaller. And in those years, he would encounter men bigger and stronger than he was. He would encounter men who knew how to use their hands and used them often. But there was one thing that he learned, and that a simple tool could even the odds. So he throws Adam this axe and then steps back from the open cell, basically inviting Adam, if he wants his freedom, take that axe and put it through my chest. Well, we know who Kingpin is, right? It doesn't matter what the other person has, especially if it's someone who's been in captivity for months, probably. So Adam gets his face beat in quite violently, by the way. I'm actually surprised that Adam survived this beating, because it felt as though and sounded as though Wilson was putting his fist through Adam's face. Through his face. He was slamming Adam against brick, and that brick was breaking. He was throwing Adam through brick, yet Adam survived. Okay, that's fine. While that's happening, Muse and Daredevil are still fighting. And if it weren't for Hector's niece almost dying, Daredevil would have killed Muse. But he finds the anger and the strength and the resolve to at least put everything he had into that fight to deliver his justice. And we've got Kingpin, who's fed up with being Mr. Mayor. We've got Wilson fed up with being Mr. Mayor, fed up with being someone who can't resolve conflict the way he knows how to, the way Kingpin knows how to. I believe that this episode was both for the rebirth of Daredevil and the rebirth of Kingpin. And it's very interesting how the show gives one thing for both of the men to kind of be the catalyst for why that rebirth was necessary. And it's their protection of New York. It's interesting that everything that Kingpin wants as mayor, he can't get unless he's Kingpin. He doesn't have it in him to be political. He doesn't have it in him to be civil. He has to strong arm his way through things because that's the best way he knows how to do it. That's the quickest way he knows how to do it. Matt needs to protect the city, but he can't do it in a suit and tie. He can't do it in a courtroom. He has to be Daredevil. And there are so many things that's happened over the course of these 6 episodes where Daredevil and Kingpin, the inevitability of both of them, you could feel it bubbling. And not because the show is called Daredevil, not because these characters are what the show is about, but the story and the script and the acting, it just led you to believe that a storm was coming, that it can't be long before something has to change. And that change being Daredevil is here. Kingpin is here. Thank you for coming to this screening of Real Swell. I hope you enjoyed. As you head out, I've got 3 things to ask of you. 1, pick up your trash. These ushers don't get paid enough. Number 2, make sure you are following so you don't miss the next screening. And number 3, hit that heart for me. I'll see you all next time. Make sure you've got your ticket.